So today we're going to be texturing, and what we have here is we have a central pneumatic spray gun. It's about 30 bucks from Harbor Freight. I really like these Harbor Freight ones, but you have to be careful because if you don't look really careful, you'll get to your job and realize, well, it doesn't even have the end that you need, which is this part. Okay, so make sure you buy a kit that has one of these in it that will be able to screw onto your sprayer. This part right here will go on top. This is where you pour your mud, and there's a little clip that goes around that's in the box as well. What do you need? First of all, you're gonna need some +3 or any type of mud will work. I'm just using that because it's a little faster drying. Inside these boxes, you got these plastic things, so you're gonna need a bucket to be able to squeeze your mud into this. And typically what I like to do is when you're doing mudding and texturing, you're gonna have this, but you're also gonna have a bucket of water. Why do you need a bucket of water? Because your hands, when you're mudding, you're texturing, your hands are gonna get soaked with mud and debris, and you need some type of bucket of water here on the side that you can go and you can wash off and keep yourself clean. Now when you're mudding and texturing also, it's important how thick the mud is based upon the type of texture you're wanting to texture. Typically the thinner the mud, the lighter the texture will be, and the thicker the mud, you know, the thicker and chunkier the texture will be. So if you're just doing like an orange peel, we're just spraying it on, you know, look at your texture. If you're matching it, like what we're trying to do is do some matching and stuff, but we're not in this room because you can see it's all flat. So really all we're wanting to do is kind of spray and just texture everything over what we already have. So what we're gonna come in here and do is we're gonna tape all of this. I'm gonna take this off, and then I'm gonna tape off my toilet paper holder, tape off my window, and put plastic. You're getting really thin plastic. You're gonna put tape on the window around the edges as well. So you can see here, when you're done, look, you got a little mud on your hand. And so you always wanna have a bucket of water that you can go and wash up in. But also, a bucket of water is extremely important because when you guys are mixing your mud, and what type of mixer do I like to use? Well, typically when I'm making this type of, when I'm making a orange peel type texture, I'm gonna get one of these mixers that are square like this because it's really not gonna throw the mud, it's not gonna break the edge of the bucket. But when you mix it, instead of washing it every time, you can put that in your bucket and it won't dry up or anything like that. So that's the reason why we do that. Back to this gun. Now when you're putting this on, you'll notice inside here, if you screw it all the way on, it's not gonna actually pressurize well. So you're gonna have to make sure that you do put a little bit of, so you're gonna wanna buy some of this as well, this plumber's tape. And just go ahead and wrap the end here with plumber's tape so that you don't have any leaking. One of the most annoying things you're gonna be dealing with when you're doing texturing is you're gonna have to deal with leaks from your hose, and it'll make your air compressor run and run and run. So put that tape on there, then screw this on real tight, and have yourself a pair of pliers that you can tighten that down on nicely. Also, should I use a small air compressor like that or one that's a little bigger? You're gonna wanna use one that's a little bigger because you're gonna want consistency with your mud, okay? Consistency with your mud. Now, if you're doing like a remodel project where you're just patching, you may want less pressure or whatever, and you can always adjust your pressure using your pressure adjuster, and it'll shoot the mud out. And if you'll notice these right here, there's tips on these. And so if you unscrew this, there's different tips. This is a big round end, so it's gonna throw out a chunkier orange peel texture, something that would be bigger and thicker. But you'll notice if you unscrew that and put on one of these smaller ones, like this or this, it'll throw out a smaller texture. And so there's gonna be different spots where you might need different textures when you're doing an old place. Another thing you gotta look at when you're texturing, especially if you're remodeling, Like something like this is like a crow's foot texture that they dragged over it. So they did like a splatter crow's foot, then they dragged over it. But it's kind of a weird look, and so you have to find out what exactly these people are doing. You notice how thick and chunky and everything is here? You're gonna have to learn how to match these textures with what you're doing. And see, here's one little spot that we're doing here. And so my plan is to have a crow's foot brush. If you know what that is, you put the crow's foot brush on there, and then after it dries a little bit, you drag it flat. But see, this looks like it's dragged flat before. Another thing you're gonna need when you are mudding and texturing is you're gonna need a pretty big drill that you can turn this with. If you just have a small little Drywall, handheld drill or battery powered drill, you're gonna wear that thing out. You need something that's pretty heavy and durable, but also the bit needs to open up big enough to be able to hold this massive mixer end. So this one will go that big. So that's why we got this bigger one here. Okay, so another thing I like to do is go ahead and tape off these plastic things here. We should have done that when we were mudding it the last time, but tape them off so you don't have to clean them when you're done. Same thing with this. All right, let's get going. So the first thing we're gonna do, we got our wet rag here. We're gonna go around and just wipe everywhere you're gonna have to tape. Another thing you wanna bring when you're doing mudding and texture is you wanna make sure to have some type of particle respirator, N95 mask or something like that you put over your face, because when you're spraying these walls, there will be some dust that'll come and it'll get in your nose, and after a while, it will get extremely frustrating. You won't even be able to hardly breathe the next day. So just make sure that you do wear a particle respirator whenever you're dealing with this kind of work, like all day long, because you don't think you're breathing in a lot of dust, but you do. So I've wiped everywhere I'm gonna put. Now these walls, this wallpaper was actually stuck on really well. There are some spots right in the middle. We're gonna use a scraper and scrape those little spots off. But for the most part, we're just gonna spray right over that and paint over that, because it's still in really good shape. Now, if you're doing a project where they want it taken off, you're gonna have to get, there's videos that'll teach you how to get rid of wallpaper like that. So we're gonna go ahead and start taping here. Go ahead and tighten up the gun just like that. You've already got your tape on there. You can also have an extension here that has a little shut off, because that actually makes it a lot easier, because this is going to automatically start blowing through there, and if any mud gets down here, it could blow out. But they do make these with shut offs that on and off. Go ahead and plug it in. There we go. Perfect. Then you can go put this on right there. And you're gonna put this in the front, because when you lean up like that, you don't want this to fall out the back. So put the handle back here in the back like that. So you got that right there. So this is actually gonna go right around, just like that. So now what we're gonna do is, we're gonna go ahead and start mixing this together. Go ahead and take this Open that up. All right, so we're on there. Go ahead and put a little bit in there. Now typically what I like to do is maybe you'll fill it up maybe an inch or two. And your first bucket, now what you're gonna do is you're gonna have to kind of identify how full this is. Maybe you could put your hand in there like that and you could touch it with your fingers or something. And you'll kind of get an idea of how far the water is up so that the next time you'll know exactly how far. So it's right over my fingernail. Go ahead and start. So basically the consistency you want is, you want it just to fall, when you pull this out, you want it just to kind of fall off. Okay, you don't want it to be to the point where it's, you know, you're pulling up the mud and it doesn't fall off. So it just, it barely falls off like that. That's perfect. And so you got your water bucket here, so you can go ahead and put this right into your water bucket and it's good to go. You probably want to have your water bucket a little fuller than that because that's going to want to tip over, but it is what it is. Now this right here, typically what I like to do with this as well is go ahead and put it in the water bucket as well. You put that in the water bucket, then you can go ahead and pour this into it, just like this. So we got that, so now it's not just going to fall over. Make sure this pressure gets built up here. Go ahead and plug it in and let the pressure build up. So now we went ahead and put this on like that. We left this side open so we can walk through here. So you notice when I was in here spraying, we're trying, the whole goal is to try to be real consistent. Now this is a little thicker than I normally do, but the reason why I'm doing it thick is because at some point there are blemishes on the wall, and if you have a thicker texture, sometimes that can cover up some of the blemishes. And so this is a lot of mismatch, patch job type stuff. And so I do want the texture to be a little bit thicker so that when it dries, you can't really see any of those blemishes. But if you really want a real orange peel texture that's not so thick, you want to water this mud down more. You want to water that mud down more, and you won't have such a thick type texture whenever you're texturing. Because right now it is really thick. And this, I usually don't have it this thick, but I wanted to because of all the patchwork that we've done. And typically you want to let the air blow until your compressor comes on so that you have the same consistency everywhere, because at first it's going to be a little higher pressure possibly until it turns off. So this next room is not as blotchy, so I'm going to make it a little thinner. So we did add a little water to it. If you do have some wallpaper, sometimes right in the middle you'll have a little bit of paper that comes up. So just go ahead and take your little knife here and just get that little spot. Or you can get a window, like a window type razor too. Sometimes that works better. Typically I mud these corners and actually even put a piece of fiberglass tape over it before you mud it. a lot of people, when they're doing texturing like this, a lot of people will actually have a certain amount of water that they put in every box. So they may put, you know, a gallon of water in each box, or half a gallon of water in each box when it's put in. So you can go ahead and measure through exactly how much you're gonna wanna do in each box. I kind of just judge it based upon how I feel it feels compared to the other one. And so sometimes it's not gonna be exactly the same. So if you need a perfectly consistent texture, you need a perfectly consistent amount of water that you put in each one. And once you get that perfect amount of water, maybe you can start in a closet and get that perfect amount of water, and then you do that every time for the whole house. So this is how you would texture a house. I appreciate you guys joining in to watching.